Jennifer, I told you guys she has already introduced herself, but something that she missed, and I know that she would miss it intentionally because she's an award-winning Indigenous anti-racism educator. She has many years of experience working as an instructor, curriculum developer, and administrator within the public K-12 system, post-secondary institutions, and on the reserves. Jennifer founded, the name of the magazine is Injustice?
Indigivision.
Indigivision.
Is the company.
She started that in 2023. Wow. Working passionately with both indigenous and non-indigenous population across Turtle Island as an educational leader, consultant, and bridge builder.
Educator, number one, so I can speak to that a little bit. But let me take you back, because maybe a little bit anecdotal, a little bit systemic, and maybe I'll call out not just the mayor, but all the systems as well. So yeah, a lot of us probably have immigrated many times. My family, when I think about it, immigrated 4 times, right, before we actually settled long-term in Vancouver. And that led to a lot of experiences. So yeah, I'm white passing, right? There's definitely privilege to that, but my family is not. And I was born with an accent, and English was my 4th language, right? So you have Arabic, and you have Hebrew, and you have French, and then, so there's a colonized element as well, to having been colonized in Morocco. Interesting lateral violence for the family that did go to Palestine, Israel-Palestine, and that classism when you are the Arabic Jew and what that means. That's a conversation for another time. And then coming to being in Montreal, and very much interestingly enough, at 5 years old, telling my parents I didn't want to go to the religious school because they weren't teaching me anything. And that's not to put down religion, but just to say that at a very early age, I needed knowledge. And knowledge that would kind of help me forward. So coming to Vancouver, being told that I would never get a job because I had an accent. So I was forced into speech therapy instead of math class. And this is under Jean Chrétien's leadership, and being told like, yeah, you'll never get a job, right? So very racist, and she was white, so I'll say racist, speech therapist. And I'm sitting there thinking like, Jean Chrétien is prime minister. He famously said he can't speak out of either side of his mouth, right? And I was like, what? Like, I don't understand. I'm from Montreal, right? This is not, yeah, Morocco, but Montreal. I did go to high school in the southern United States, in Florida, and there I was put into the lowest level English classes. Within 2 days, thank bless the teacher, going like, you don't belong here. Now, I did join the ROTC, the Reserve Officer Training Corps, this leadership course that's very much under the American military. What I saw there at a very young age was exactly the idea of streamlining. And at the time, of course, when I was younger, I hated those teachers. They're worksheeting you to death. They don't seem to care. Now, as an educator, I understand. Weak unions, right? 40 kids per class, if not more, right? So now I understand the systemic realities of it all. But the reality that many of us were told, you will never graduate, you're gonna drop out. A lot of my friends being kind of gangbanger type of style. And this is in between Fort Lauderdale and Miami. So get ready. I went to a high school called South Plantation High School in a town called Plantation. Yes. So Paladin was our mascot. So somehow we avoided that. But yeah. So having that, so I grew with a lot of friendships there, and actually some very critically minded leaders, believe it or not. Educators that use Howard Zinn and not the regular old textbook. Educators that broke the mold, and thank God for that. So I did come back to Canada. I avoided the military path, but I did lose friends who would die in Iraq and Afghanistan, knowing full well I would have always refused. That's the interesting part of it all. But that legacy of kind of like those racist incidents throughout. I did have a sister born at 9 years old. At first at VGH, we were transferred to Women's Children's Hospital. I don't know what it's called now. It was Grace at the time. Yeah, so my mom is white passing like me, but my dad is very brown and very heavily accented, both of them. Seeing my first sister Alicia eventually die because of malfeasance by the doctors throughout the pregnancy. Refusal of even our own religious leaders to come to us in the middle of the night. And it's interesting now when I teach about abortion and like laws, right, policy, and realizing that in this current day and age, my mom, my dad, myself, even, because I was asked to cut the cord and we did end her life together, that they would be up for murder charges. right? Because of what's happening to reproductive justice in the United States. So I say these things, and I have so much more to share on that front, but I'll leave the anecdotal aside. I absolutely agree with you that our education system, our entire system, is really predicated on white supremacy and racism. And we have a long way to go to see that change, right? So let me start one way, because I see the Kafiyas in the room, and I think, and we all know that there is a criminalization of democratic protests in this country, in Vancouver, in Surrey, in all kinds of places, where if you dare speak out, you know, you get that backlash, right? You're part of some terrorist affiliation, you're being Islamophobic or anti-Semitic or whatever word you want to throw out there, depends on the protest. I'll tell you right now, it's interesting hearing you, and I'm getting like massive amounts of tweet hate because of what I have up in my classroom, because of what I choose to teach. That is happening right now. Because I dare speak out, because I dare speak about different things. So there's that out, and it makes me very angry. So the fact that I was at my AGM, my union's AGM, and again, I have colleagues that were here with me, and to hear fellow teachers, not a lot of them, but certainly a handful, that would say things, oh, you can teach whatever you want, who's to care? We don't have to add it to the curriculum. And I'm sitting back thinking about Black students, Indigenous students, all kinds of students, right? Palestinian students, all things. And being told, like, to our faces that somehow, you know, talking about this will only lead to more division. And in my mind, it's the opposite. We talk about the diversity. We talk about the differences. We talk about the hard histories that colonization did on most lands in our world. We talk about it so that we do bring down those racial prejudice kind of barriers, right? And I said it very clearly in my speech. The way you fight anti-Semitism or Islamophobia or you know, anti-Sikh or whatever, you know, hate, is to actually address it, to talk about it, to talk about those issues, to build that critical thinking skills in our students so that they can learn the truth and the complexity of the truth as well. That you're not supposed, it's not a zero-sum game. It's not us versus them. It's not one or the other. It's everybody. It's humanity, as Camilla, you said, right? And how we push our politicians and our leaders to do better. I teach in a BIPOC school, staff and students, kind of rare, but very happy to do that. And absolutely, you can see that erasure, and I felt it, that assimilation, that need to integrate. So the fact that I can't speak Arabic anymore, I can't speak Hebrew anymore, my French is going away, because the pressure to excel, to do well, to fit into the system. Don't cause alarm, right? Don't let people, but even now, my own family going, be careful. And I don't even tell them all this stuff. You know, be careful, don't. And yet, here I am in all these spaces speaking about these topics. I absolutely hold our education system accountable for the fact that we have to fight so hard just to get that Indigenous curriculum in place, just to get Black Canadian history in place, right? As at the meeting that we were both at, finally hearing from a colleague of ours at BCCA, saying finally there's gonna be something in Socials 10, like with supports. Believe me, teachers are teaching it. I promise you there are teachers out there spending thousands of dollars of their own money bringing in curriculum, right? And trying to change things and fighting back against streamlining. As an Indigenous department head, you know, you get to be in those conversations and making sure that doesn't happen, right? Again, knowing that in the military system in the States, to see all of us being streamlined, right? And honestly, how could I go against someone that says, I'm only going to get my chance at having a career, at getting to be an engineer or a lawyer or a doctor if I join the military, because nobody else believes in me, right? Like how do you address that issue, right? Knowing that they're entering an oppressive system, and yet the only system that dares sees them as useful, right? Useful enough to educate. So I think absolutely we're living in a system that we have to be more critical of. And lateral violence is absolutely massive. I see classism rampant in our own school. You know, I love the idea that, you know, love Black people like you love Black culture. So I see endless people of color that will love Black culture, right? The music, the style, the this, the that, but the N-word comes out of their mouth. And they say, I'm allowed to say it. I'm like, no, you aren't. Like, let's discuss this, right? Let's really break it down. Or even worse, where you know, their families tell them, don't date the Black students, right? If you bring home, or whatever, if you bring home a different caste, If you bring home a different this, right, that's wrong, right? You know, they're Shia, they're Sunni, you know, I mean, I can give you a million examples from every culture, right? This is problematic. And again, to me though, when you dig deep, it's white supremacy. It's divide and conquer. It's making sure that we look at one another and we find those differences. Oh, you're newer to the country. As you said, the accent piece, right? I always tell my students, especially in like French class, that it's, you know, if someone has an accent, they're smarter than you. Just assume that, because they already know another language that you don't, right? But secondly, that I will never tell a student your attempt at gaining another language is weaker or not as in progress because you're speaking with an accent. Right? That's absolutely wrong to do so. It's one thing to try, right? It's one thing to enunciate properly. It's another thing to actually use an accent and just, you know, like your muscles just don't change, right? Dare me to speak any other language, I sound French, you know? So you know, it's interesting how our minds work that way. At the end of the day, especially at LA Matheson, Mustang Justice, kind of the work we do, we believe in mentorship through identity. So being proud of your heritage. That is so important. But in doing so, not in erasing or stepping over someone else, because I can tell you, I have family members that are doing that right now are absolutely oppressing Palestinian people because of their own internalized trauma, right? And their inability to overcome that and go, wait a minute, this is family. What the hell are we doing here, right? So sometimes I see that. I see that concern of, it's about me. It's about my culture. What about us? Absolutely, yes. But us will never be as strong as all of us, right? So we need to combine, right? Yeah. We need to, and that's our role as educators. So not to say you're never going to get there. How about a plan B, but always plan A? And to really push it when people go, well, why do we have to do this? I just want to focus on that. You're limiting your imagination. You're limiting your world, right? And I'll finish on this note because it is important to me right now. It's important to a lot of people. And coming out of a couple last days where we saw the first trans woman get into the BCTF leadership, top levels. We have finally a 2S LGBTQI plus designated seat. I understand people have opinions and different backgrounds and different cultural norms and different religious norms. But I can tell you that at the root of so much of that queerphobia and that misunderstanding and that idea that these people are sinners is because I've done the research. We are erasing our own ancestors. The white colonial structures went in, Christian structures, and decided to erase these spectrums. And so not only is it, I get it if you don't understand, but have you done your own cultural history? And the fact that I see, when I wake up in the morning and I see people attacking people they don't know, it's a problem, right? We will never be an anti-racist society if we keep dividing and conquering on other norms. Be that class, be that sex, gender, whatever other category you want to throw in there. We're never going to move forward the way we have to. So yes, it started because of South Africa, right? The International Day. Yes, we can point to a lot of huge kind of tip of the iceberg racist incidents in America and Quebec, right? France, you know, yeah, sure. But gosh darn it, it's right here at home, right? And it happens in the most insidious ways as well. And it happens within ourselves. And I agree with you. I always teach about the isms and the ists. The isms and the ists are systemic issues. Are we all prejudiced? Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's step one, right? And then we can necessarily critically analyze where things become systemic. Because I certainly want all my students to know that no matter what you're facing, there's the individual response, which is important, right? There's the communal response, and there's the systemic response. And we are failing 100% at the systemic response. So much like you, all the race-based data being collected, the upcoming anti-racism legislation, many more, and keeping a critical eye. Because we shouldn't have these stories, right? This is a problem. These are all red flags, right? None of us are that old, right? That we can say, ah, that was, you know, way back in the day. No, the Indian Act still exists, right? It's still assigned status somehow, right? And so all of these things we have to keep, and I agree with you, education is where we start. Now, education is never within four walls. So do you have your families, your students, your kids take part in other parts of community, right? What are we doing at home? What are we doing with our friends? What are we doing in our places of worship? What are we, where do we spend our time on our, I know people need to relax, take care of yourself, but when you have that moment to share space, to enjoy a culture, how are you doing that? And it really, that responsibility starts at home, and that education is all of us. You as a parent are an educator. 100% yes, right? And what you teach, and trust me, it's not about what you say, it's about what you act like. So I'll leave you with this. A student that told me, this is a person of Punjabi heritage, we're learning all these things in class, and he goes, Miss Ohana, that sounds great, but I realized that when I'm at home, like my dad will tell me something, right? Don't do that. And then it was a couple of weeks before then, had been on a phone call with a client or something, and had basically talked to that person very nicely, hung up, turns around, diatribe of racist language against this person, right? And so this kid's like, what? You tell me not to do that, and then you do that, right? But then you tell me not to do that. And I was like, yeah. Absolutely, right? So how do you build that dialogue? Last but not least, the only way we end racism, the only way we actually end anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-Palestinian, again, fill in the blank, right? Whatever it is to actually have these discussions, and that these borders are fake. There's a lot of man-made things out there that are keeping us apart, and it's good to have faith. It's good to believe in your nationality, to be a proud Nigerian. All these things are amazing, but never let that close your eyes to the reality of other people, because the second it becomes a limiting, then that label is damaging. Right? Let our labels uplift us and destroy those barriers, so that those labels are important, that identity is important, but it's not to then create a new hierarchy, right? Down with hierarchy. Let's exist in diversity, and I truly believe that way we can start looking at racism. But we got to remember that ism, that ist, right? That is systemic, and I call out every structure in the world for that, because we have starving Palestinian children, Congo, Yemen, Uyghur Muslims, in Europe, Russia, all, anyways, the list goes on and on. I truly believe that is the job of all of us to do that work. So I applaud you for the work you're already doing. I think sometimes we just always think in the negative. There is so much amazing things happening. But I can tell you, from someone that sees students being attacked, sees families being attacked, sees teachers like myself and others being attacked, we need to do a lot more. I want to stop thinking that you need a viral story, that you need the police, that you need somebody, just like you. I'm messaging the top folks at Surrey School District. I got the big names on my side. What if I didn't? I wouldn't have a job. I might even be hurt, right? Like physically hurt, right? So it's not enough to just hope you have privilege, right? Like for those of us that come from so little privilege, like, oh, I finally got, into a place where somebody's gonna listen. But I always remember that place was never open to me, right? Until I did 10 times extra to even get a spot, just to have a moment, not even to be in that room, right? Just to be invited once in a while. So I'm very aware of how there's a ladder when you don't have privilege, and you can go up that ladder, you can fall down that ladder. So thank you for all that you're doing. Let us continue to do more, and don't be shy to call out ourselves, our own communities, our own schools, as all these folks have so wonderfully done. It is not anti-Canadian, it is not anti-anything. If we are not critical of our own states, our own institutions, our own systems, then we have no right to then go elsewhere and tell them how things should be done.